I know there's a lot of push for legislation. People have already, are promoting these things and co-sponsoring them in the House of Representatives to limit or regulate or do something to unextend the reach of these radical activist judges across the country, where Democrats have figured out a new equation. We don't have to have the speaker's gavel. We don't have to have the majority in the Senate. Shoot, we don't even have to win the presidency, because anytime we're not in power, all we need to do is find a judge who's going to write an injunction, and that president's mandate, what he got voted into office for, is immediately stopped. So I know Congress has a lot of different ways of looking at that. Impeachment's going to take some votes in the Senate, but when you're talking about limiting these actions, things of like the bill that maybe Dale Issa has, who's coming out of California with, or maybe some other things that you want to talk to our listenership about right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, look, we all of us, certainly in the Freedom Caucus, believe that, the Constitution matters. We got Article 1, 2, and 3 branches of government. So you got the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. We should all stay in their lanes. But obviously, just like everything else the left touch and corrupts and destroys, they have done that to the courts. And the courts is out of its lane with these nationwide injunctions by individual circuit judges. And the legislation that we pushed through this week would limit it to those plaintiffs that bring the case in those courts. So that would be no longer nationwide injunctions. Now, of course, the problem with that is how do you get that through a Senate that requires 60? And, we got 53 and no Democrat votes. So what we're going to look to is find a way to place that into reconciliation. And quite honestly, we're going to use the Democrats' playbook. Unfortunately, like I said, they corrupt everything that they touch, and they did that with reconciliation by just essentially deeming things that were mandatory spending. They just said, well, this is now mandatory.
Right.
They did that in the Inflation Reduction Act and other pieces of legislation, and they just pushed their policies through, and they just did it by deeming it so. And the parliamentarian just said, well, you said it is, so it is. Well, if the Democrats can do it and open Pandora's box, well, turnabout is fair play. So we need to do that. Now, look, I will tell you this. I'm not above impeaching some judges, and I think that there are some that have certainly earned it.
Sure.
And I think it's a shot across the bow that the House has to take, even if they're not going to happen in the Senate. We're not going to get a conviction in the Senate. But I think it's important that we go through the exercise. I think it's important that we get it right. Impeachment is it's a nuclear option. We'll put it like that. And so it's not for everything, and it's not for trivial things, but for things that are important and things that are worthy, where judges have used and abused their power to violate people's civil rights and to violate the Constitution. I think it's important that we send a message to judges that might be thinking of doing this in the future, that there's going to be consequences, because right now there has been no consequence. The House of Representatives needs to stay exercised in this. They need to stay in shape. It's just like it's keeping your body in shape. We need to go through the motions. The problem is that we don't want to spend a whole lot of time and resources where we could be doing things like codifying the president's executive orders and moving them to the Senate for passage. We don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time with something that's never going to see the light of day. But we do need to let the judiciary know when you're out of bounds. The legislature is going to realize it, and we're going to do something about it. And quite honestly, I think what we also need to do is use the Holman rule to defund somebody. We don't want to defund the whole judiciary, right? We need a judiciary. We need the courts. They have a vital role in an open and free constitutional society. But where there are rogue actors, Congress can take action and limit their pay, limit that office's money, and use the power of the purse appropriately to make sure that they get the message. We're not going to, we're not going to spend money on your personal political projects. We don't have to spend money on it, and we're not going to.